Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Homage to the Blessed One, the Perfect One, the harmoniously awakened one. Today I am happy to be present and talk to you. My topic is, what is karma? Or, as you are familiar with this word, karma. This word is not a law of punishment and reward. That is not the meaning of the word karma. Karma simply means our actions. But here the Buddha spoke about karma when he said, Cetana ahang bhikkhave kammang vadami, which means it is the emotional impulse behind the act that becomes karma, which means the motive. Cetana is the motive behind the action. Now what this means is, most people, when they worry about various things and when they speak about karma, they mainly refer to the circumstances that they are facing. People can have pleasant circumstances or unpleasant circumstances. And it is this circumstance that people begin to worry about or be glad about. And in explaining these circumstances, people think of karma as the cause of these circumstances. And then the circumstances become not karma but vipaka. Vipaka is the result or the consequence of karma. The important thing that the Buddha spoke of is to emphasize the karma, which is the action or the thought or the mental attitude that a person has, which can result in good or bad consequences. The emphasis is not on the consequence or the vipaka or the circumstance. The emphasis is on the attitude to circumstance. This is the important thing. It is the attitude to circumstance that we call karma. So the Buddha speaks of karma in terms of the 10 akusala karma or the 10 unwholesome actions or attitudes. And the Buddha's teaching is to avoid these unwholesome actions and to cultivate the wholesome attitudes. So he speaks of karma in terms of thoughts, speech and action. Action in the form of behavior. There are 3 kinds of unwholesome actions: hurting or harming others, and stealing or robbing or taking others' properties, which is not willingly given, and the sexual misconduct or sensual misconduct like adultery or any other unwholesome sexual behaviors. The fourth one is to refrain from dishonesty, falsehood, lying. But this doesn't mean that we should be speaking the truth all the time. That's also important to understand. If the truth that we speak hurts another person, which may be insulting to another person or unpleasant to another person, we should not tell the truth. If it is a kind of harsh speech, we should not say it, although it may be true. We should not also speak the truth if it brings two people against each other, which means carrying tales around or gossiping. That sort of speech, even if it is true, should not be used. And the other is all kinds of speech that is maybe a truth, but it is a bad kind of low-level speech, idle speech, which may be harmful to people, even if it is not directly harsh speech, not directly putting two people against each other, but it may be bad speech. Then, of course, that means there are 4 kinds of good speech, or we have to avoid 4 kinds of evil speech there. Then the 5th point is not to be taking intoxicants. Now, really, when we speak of the 10 unwholesome actions, the taking intoxicants is not really included. But if we take intoxicants, we lose our proper sense of mind, and therefore we might commit all the bad deeds. Then there are 3 things that should be avoided, which are mental actions or mental thoughts, and that is greed or desiring other people's things, and the second is the thoughts to hurt others, evil thoughts of hurting, harming, taking revenge, that sort of thought. And the other, third kind of thought to be avoided is bad views or opinions, which are called miccha ditthi, bad views. Bad views means certain views, certain notions or beliefs that lead to unwholesome behavior or encourage unwholesome behavior. So these are the 10 kinds of bad behavior to be avoided or unwholesome behavior to be avoided. 3 kinds of physical actions, 4 kinds of speech, and 3 kinds of thoughts. And these 10 kinds of unwholesome actions are rooted in 3 states of mind, what is called lobha, dosa and moha, which in translation can mean lust, hate and delusion. Lust is the desire for pleasure, hate is the hatred of pain or unpleasant things, and the delusion is to think in terms of mine and myself. In other words, the self-centered notion. The self-centered notion begins to be the root of all the evil actions. So the good actions are just the opposite of these things. To avoid hurting others, to avoid stealing or robbing, to avoid sexual misbehavior, to avoid falsehood or lying, to avoid hurtful speech or harmful speech, to avoid putting people against each other, to avoid useless chatter, and the thoughts as greed, hatred and delusion. And really greed, hatred and wrong views. So these are the things to be avoided, and they are good behavior, good actions which are rooted in the absence or non-lust, non-hate and non-delusion. That means the unselfish acts. So this way, good actions and bad actions have been described as good karma and bad karma. And why these things are bad is simply not because this is going to create a rebirth in hell or good actions creating a rebirth in heaven. That is not the real motive. The motive is simply to be compassionate and friendly to all beings, so that we don't hurt or harm others, so that this whole thing is based on what is called universal benevolence, metta or maitri, rather than thinking in terms of punishment and reward. So the important thing is that karma is not just a law of punishment and reward, but it is a wholesome attitude of mind which brings happiness to oneself as well as others. So this is the important thing about the Buddhist concept of karma. Now karma is also used in another religion like Hinduism, but the way the Buddha speaks about karma is mainly to think in terms of the basic attitude, which is love, compassion. And so it is based on the universal benevolence, metta or maitri. Another important thing that we should understand, which can be illustrated, is once a certain person came to the Buddha, and the Buddha asked him a question, "What does your teacher teach you?" And that person said, "My teacher says that killing is not good, it will lead you to hell. Stealing is not good, it will lead you to hell. Adultery is not good, it will lead you to hell. False speech and discourteous speech is not good because it will lead you to hell. And taking intoxicants or any harmful drugs is not good because it can lead you to hell. Then the Buddha says, well, if that is what your teacher taught, you will all go to hell. Because sometime in your life you could have hurt someone. You could have been stealing even a small coin, or you may have been telling lies, or any of these things you could have committed, and then that will lead you to hell. But this is not the way I teach my disciples, he said. I teach that killing is a bad deed. Give up killing or hurting others. Stealing is a bad deed. Give up stealing and robbing. Sexual misconduct is a bad deed. Therefore, give up this. Speaking false speech is also not good, or any discourteous speech is not good. Therefore, give up this. Taking intoxicants is not good. Therefore, give up this. So, saying this, my disciples, after I have explained this, they begin to give up these things and they begin to practice universal benevolence. They practice thoughts like, may all beings be well and happy. May all beings be well and happy. That's the kind of thought. And also the thoughts of compassion, where they begin to think, just as I should be well and happy, may all beings be well and happy. That means to consider others as important as oneself, making no distinction between oneself and others, just as a mother would treat the child with love and compassion. The child's happiness is the mother's happiness. The child's unhappiness is the mother's unhappiness. Compassion. And when a person cultivates this compassion, that person's mind becomes unselfish, completely selfless. And when that happens, this person's unhappiness, sorrows, grief disappears, because all sorrow, grief, unhappiness is self-centered. And when a person becomes completely unselfish and selfless, that person becomes a happy person. So he enjoys the happiness not of gaining things, but the happiness of selflessness. And when this happens, he can look within himself, but not think in terms of a self. And this way, when the mind is introverted or focused within, the mind becomes calm and tranquil. And when the mind becomes calm and tranquil and peaceful, whatever happens in the world, whether it is gain or loss, fame or ill fame, praise or blame, pleasure or pain, whatever happens in the outside world, it doesn't trouble or disturb the mind of this person. That state of mind is the real, peaceful, happy mind. And it is only when the mind is tranquil in this way, that we can really practice love towards all beings. Love not as an attachment, but as a selfless state of the mind, where we can become interested in the welfare of others for their sake, not to become interested in the welfare of others for our sake, but to become interested in the welfare of all beings without exception, in a selfless way. And this is possible only when our mind is calmed. Why? Because all the emotional excitements of the mind are self-centered, whether it comes in the form of a desire, or whether it is coming in the form of a hatred, or whether it comes in the form of a fear, or whether it comes in the form of a worry or anxiety, all that is self-centered. When the mind is selfless, free of selfishness, that mind is a happy mind. And it is with this happy mind that we can speak to others in a pleasant way and act towards others in a pleasant way. So this way we make ourselves happy and we also make others happy. And that is how we become truly good people. And we become truly good only when our mind has been purified, and we also become happy as a result. So this is the teaching of the Buddha. And this teaching of the Buddha, as it is understood in this way, we don't have to worry about whether we are going to be living another life after death. This is something very important that the Buddha mentioned in the Kalama Sutra. The Kalama Sutra is a famous sutra, well known to Buddhists, where the Buddha speaks about truth. This is where, when someone came and asked the Buddha, so many people come to us and speak about various ideas, and these ideas are all based on dogmatism. They begin to say that their view is the right view and all other views are wrong. So we are unable to make a decision what is right and what is wrong. So the Buddha said, don't go by what other people say. Don't go by traditions. Don't go by just believing whatever a person says. Don't go by reasoning or logical reasoning. Don't go even by direct observation. Don't accept anything as a truth. But whenever you know that when a certain thing is good, it is regarded as good by the wise, and it leads to the happiness of oneself and others, then you should be doing good. When it leads to the unhappiness of oneself and others, then you should not be doing that. So what is important here is not whether a statement is true or false. The important thing here is whether a statement or even an action is good or bad. So in other words, the important thing that the Buddha taught was the difference between good and bad, not what is true and false. Because the Buddha said everything is simply a statement which could either be good or bad. There is no such thing as a truth or falsehood in the world. What we can talk about is what is good and what is bad. This is why when a person came once to the Buddha and asked, "What do you teach? Is there something that you teach?" And the Buddha said, "I teach doing what is good and not doing what is bad." So doing good and avoiding bad is the teaching of the Buddha. This is why the Buddha said to refrain from all evil, to do what is good, to purify the mind. This is the teaching of all Buddhas. So this is the important thing to realize. And so I am very happy today to have been sharing my thoughts with you. And I hope you understood the teaching of the Buddha. May you all be well, peaceful and happy. Thank you.